Hello and welcome to the presentation, Women in the Workplace, Why the Pay Gap. This is derived from chapter 39 of the book, It's the Manager, and this is following the course Managerial Communication led by Dr. Tracy Austin in Sam Houston State University. My name is Doreen Mothe, and let's get into the presentation. It's no longer a question if gender pay exists, but a question of why there is a gender pay gap. A simple definition of gender pay gap is the difference in earnings between women and men. Gender pay gap is a persistent fact across time and across countries. For example, in the US, women earn 83% of what men earn. In simple terms, if a man is earning $1, a woman at the same time is earning 83 cents. In Japan, women earn 73% of what men earn. And in Denmark, there is a 15% wage gap. One question that comes from this is the attributing factor discrimination? A research done by Professor Goldin, a professor of economics from Harvard, found that there is no strong evidence that gender pay gap is due to discrimination, and that discrimination is an aggregate factor to the gender pay gap. So, leaves us with a question, what then are the factors that affect the gender pay gap? Just before we look at the factors, we will look into some facts about gender pay gap. Some facts worth noting about the gender pay gap is that 1. When men and women start jobs directly out of college, their pay is similar. However, the pay gap and the difference in titles become substantial about 10 to 15 years later. The change also starts to happen a year or two after a female employee has a child. In the next coming slides, we will see how children have affected the gender pay gap. Another fact is that the gender wage gap is more than just a few cents in terms of dollars and cents. In the previous slide, we did see that women earn 83% of what men earn. But what does that mean in numbers? In 2019, for example, 55 million full-time working women earned an estimated $545.7 billion, less than their male counterparts. Even in more precise terms, if the gender pay gap was closed in 2019, that would mean that every woman among the 55 million full-time would have earned $9,613 more than they did in 2019. Another fact to note is that education level does not affect the gender wage gap. At every education level, women are paid less than men. For instance, a male graduate student seems to be paid more than a female graduate student at the same level. Another fact to note is that jobs with the greatest gender pay gap are those where it is most difficult to achieve high levels of success if employees need flexibility. These are jobs such as those in the financial sector, law, and some healthcare professions. Jobs that have less difference in pay by gender are in the science and technology and also some healthcare professions. Another last factor is that gender pay gaps varies widely by states. In the US, for example, the gender pay ratio female versus male hourly earnings between 2013 to 2015 show that in Washington, D.C., it was 92.9%. In Texas, through the same years, it was 82.5%. In Vermont, 91.2%, and in Missouri, 79.2%. So let's see what factors contribute to the gender pay gap. One factor is children. Part of the reason for the gender pay gap is that women are more likely to take a break during their careers to have children. Women are also likely to seek lower paid positions that offer more flexibility to make it easier to manage a family. Women who return to the workforce after having children are also shown to incur a wage penalty, or often called a motherhood penalty. This is where women with children make less than men with children, or even women without children. Men, on the other hand, do not experience a penalty in compensation after becoming parents. Some men even are paid more after having children. Another factor is occupational segregation. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics show that occupations that are more male-dominated tend to be paid better regardless of skill or education level. The most predominant gender norm is that women are meant to have children and will eventually become mothers and homemakers, whether or not they actually do or want to, which can results to assumptions about their proficiency, their productivity levels, or even the commitment to their careers, which in turn impact their compensation. Another factor is the difference in years of experience. Women are driven out of the workforce to accommodate caregiving and other unpaid obligations, and thus tend to have less work experience than men. Another contributing factor is the difference in hours worked. Because women tend to work fewer hours to accommodate caregiving and other unpaid obligations, they are also more likely to work part-time, which means lower hourly wages and fewer benefits compared to full-time workers. Another factor, and the last factor, is discrimination. As mentioned earlier, research done by Professor Golding shows that discrimination is an aggregate contributing factor to gender pay gap. But we see that discrimination can thrive, especially in workplaces that discourage open discussion of wages and where employees fear retaliation. Beyond explicit decisions to pay women less than men, employers may discriminate in pay when they rely on prior salary history in hiring and compensation decisions. This can enable pay decisions that could be influenced by discrimination to follow women from job to job. Following from the factors from the previous slides, we are left with the question, what can be done about the gender pay gap? First, it is important to note that the gender wage gap has only closed by 4 cents in more than a decade. However, that should not be a discouraging point, since us as the people, the organizations, the society, and the government at large, we have a large role to play to close the gender gap. First, there's need to update comprehensive equal pay legislation such as the Paycheck Fairness Act. This is an act that seeks to strengthen existing protections and further fight discriminatory practices. Secondly, enacting in essential policies such as work-family policies. These are policies so that women who assume much of the caregiving responsibilities in their families are not disadvantaged by taking time to address their care needs. Thirdly, the society has a role to play where it needs to confront cultural biases that continue to harm women and devalue their work and confining them to specific gender roles. Lastly, women are encouraged to join unions. Unionization can help narrow the gap because workers collectively often have greater leverage to push for workplace changes, combat discriminatory practices, and bargain for better working conditions and wages. That said, we all have a role to play to close in the gender gap. Let's do our part. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.